Reading, Olympus One-Offs by Engineer Forever.
Reading. It's tricky. I wonder what he'll be as this time. Percy asked when the title of the chapter appeared on the screen. Maybe she'll be a girl, Talia said to her cousin with a frown. Not every universe is the same gender, Kelphead. They have been so far. Hazel pointed out. That's because this is a sexist book, Talia said with a huff. Yeah, well, it's not about the kid, it's about his relationship to his parent that we're more interested in, Hermes said to the hunter. Still sexist. Talia grunted while Artemis nodded in agreement. Okay, so who's next? Nico asked before Artemis and her cheerleader was challenged. I will. Piper smiled as she took the book. Alaska, the last frontier. Where a Roman eagle is / was, where I will be and or have been, and where a giant is / was. Percy bluntly pointed out. The Romans grumbled at his input. It was embarrassing and they didn't like to be reminded of it. A mindset undoubtedly brought on by their camp's namesake. It was the 49th edition to the United States of America, purchased in 1867. It was called the most expensive popsicle in history. It is the largest state in the United States, with over 660,000 square miles of land to its name. Despite the massive size, there were only almost 800,000 people in Alaska and 2 were currently on their way to the Alaska Range via helicopter, Mount Foraker to be precise. The roar of the wind being cut by the helicopter's blades had the pilot look up at a meter above him and then hit the switch. Just hit the PNR. I'm going to have to refuel at the bottom of the mountain. You sure you don't just want to head up on one of their rides with the others on the tour? Is he going to do what I think he is? Jason looked interested. You mean snap his neck from a dumbass YOLO stunt? Probably. Talia blanched at the height and ignored the glare Hestia gave her for her language. Still, gotta give him some mad props for that. Yeah, way to be a stupid protagonist. Talia mumbled. He must have taken a note from Percy. Funny, Nico. Percy glared at his cousin. And true. Nico smirked. He's right, it is. Apollo nodded. I'll be fine, Mac, the passenger in the back said from where he was seated behind the pilot. The passenger was a young man that was at his physical peak, seen by his toned arms. He had a small black backpack with a red spiral on the outermost pouch. He wore a light black vest, red band with a black spiral on his left arm, slightly shorter than average orange snow pants, and dark boots on his feet. Around his head was a steel gray bandana that kept cropped blonde hair out of his face. He pulled orange-tinted snow goggles over his eyes and stood up. He moved to the middle of the helicopter and grabbed a handle that was on the door. The passenger then grabbed an icy white board that rested to the side of the door and set it at his feet. His boots clicked into place and the passenger tested the emergency release, also known as the Supercross button, or the SX button as most users called it in the current tour he was on. Be at the peak in a bit. Mac called over his shoulder. He reached up and flipped the switch above him. The interior of the helicopter lights turned red. The passenger nodded and reached up to his ear. He tapped a button and nodded his head to the remixed Run DMC classic as it filled his ear. Aye, it's tricky. No way. Talia breathed as her eyes filled with joy. Wow, that takes me back to our childhood. What? Jason blinked when Talia began to bounce in her seat like a child on a sugar high. SSX tricky, Jason. We played it all the time back in the day. I beat you every time, of course. The hunter preened nonchalantly, like she had said she won the championship at a world tournament with a blindfold on. Quote ellipsis. I wasn't even 2. Jason dryly reminded his sister. Talia gave him a stern look. Every time. Oh okay. Jason shrunk away from the glare he received. Eyes hidden by the orange goggles closed. Sound was drowned out as he focused on his breathing. 50 meters left. 30. 10. The passenger turned the handle and opened the door. Cold air rushed into the somewhat warm helicopter as the passenger opened his eyes to look at the white mountaintop. The passenger reached out with his fingerless gloves and grabbed the sides of the door. He rocked back before he launched himself forward with a yell. And then he broke his neck. The end. Ares grinned. Called it. Talia Grace. Hestia frowned at the hunter. I'm just saying. Mac watched his passenger dive into a spin like a reverse top and shook his head. Kids are crazy these days, but you take the cake. The thrill seeker flipped forward and landed board first on the side of the mountain. Gravity already had him in its grip, but he planned to use it to his advantage. With a wide grin on his face, and a classic remix in his ear, the passenger hit a relatively small portion of snow that he jumped off of. For a second and a half, the thrill seeker had a prime view of his descent, and with elation in his voice, he cried out, "Mount Foraker meet the maelstrom of swirling whirlpools." "Doesn't he mean icy waves?" Hermes asked. "Dude, that was terrible." Apollo shook his head. "Yeah, I know, but he should be going with an ice theme here. Fits the situation. The name doesn't change because of the situation." "You'd think it would. Will you two please shut up?" Artemis asked, annoyed by their banter. "Let Piper McLean continue so we can get on with this book." Quote. "You just want to see the next, Fearless, don't you?" Hermes asked with a smirk. "Ah, Lil, sis loves her baby Naru. Ow, 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 ow." Apollo winced as Artemis tightly grabbed his ear. "Shut up." The goddess turned to the current reader and nodded while she continued to hold Apollo's ear. "Please continue." The bottom of his board slammed back down into the mountainside and white powder exploded upwards as Newton's law said it would. Naruto Uzumaki continued to grin as Run DMC's remixed track played in his ear. He crouched down and turned to the left. "Let's spin on things," Naruto said to himself as he came to another edge. Once more than half his board was off, Naruto pushed and pulled his legs up to jump. The coiled position he put himself in was released, which resulted in a perfect 360 spin that done simultaneously with his backflip. Naruto grinned as powder shot up at his landing once again. "Nailed it. That's what she said. Hephaestus beat Ares to it." Quote ellipsis. "Bastard." The war god glared at his brother while his parents scowled at him. "That's my thing. Pick up the pace next time," Hephaestus said with a snort and went back to tinkering on what looked like a glove of some sort. A fallen tree got Naruto's attention and he shifted in that direction. From where he was, 10 seconds away from running into the tree, he could see that too many branches remained, but it would otherwise make for a perfect rail jump. Naruto looked around, 8 seconds, and determined he was clear of being watched. 5 seconds until he hit the tree. Naruto held his right hand out as he coasted down the side of the mountain. A stream of frozen wind shot from his palm and rushed at the tree. Branches that previously obscured him were knocked out of the way. "Perhaps he is a son of Boreas." Zeus rumbled with narrowed eyes. "It's entirely possible," Poseidon said with a nod. "He could be a Roman, too." "Oh, wonderful. Because that always ends well." Hades scowled as his Roman child shivered. Piper got a bad feeling in her gut at Zeus' speculation, but pushed it aside and read on. Naruto smirked for a moment until he remembered something. He was 2 seconds away from the tree. Mount Foraker didn't have trees this far up. A second to impact and Naruto turned his hips to make his board horizontal in an effort to break. Something didn't add up, and when something didn't add up, usually it spelled trouble for the thrill seeker. The tree exploded upwards thanks in part to a hairy arm that was nearly as long as Naruto was tall, 6 feet and bulging with muscle. Naruto was grabbed by another arm. A hand equally twice the size of his head grabbed him by the torso. "Ha! Told Mero that I catch halfling on mountaintop," the giant exclaimed in broken English. Naruto grimaced as the smell of the giant's breath hit his nose. "They never floss, a shame really." The sun god sighed. He was always so disappointed in people who didn't practice dental hygiene. They would need steel wires for those things. Leo blanched, but got an idea that he quickly jotted down on his napkin. "Huh, wire floss. Damn, man, you need a tic-tac or something. Because your breath stinks." The giant glared at him, 2 ugly whitish-brown eyes filled with loathing. "Halfling, shut up. I eat you, halfling, no care if breath stink. Apparently you also don't care if your grammar is goodly," Naruto grumbled. He glared behind his orange-tinted goggles at the giant. "If you're going to do something, do it fast. I'm on a schedule. I've got to train for the race tomorrow. Seriously, getting in the way of my daily life. How uncool." Percy sighed. "It's like that time at the skate park. I was banned. For life. I don't want you to be a skater anyway." Annabeth told her whining boyfriend. "I don't know, those rails at Camp Jupiter look rad." "No, Jason, Frank, and Reina told him. Percy clicked his tongue. Race. No race for halfling. Slug eat you, the giant, Slug, said as he shook Naruto in his grip. Slug smirked as Naruto let out a mild groan, then sniffed the blonde. Minty. Who parent you, halfling? Naruto smirked at the giant. Come closer and I'll whisper it to you. Slug frowned and brought Naruto up to his ear. Tell Slug who parent you, halfling. My godly parent's name is. Naruto took in a deep breath and then blew sharply into Slug's ear. Several sharp shards of ice traveled at wicked speeds through one ear and didn't go out. Slug's eyes rolled into his head and his grip went slack. Naruto pressed the SX button in his glove and his snowboard detached as he dropped to the ground. Naruto grabbed the edge of his board and landed feet first on the mountainside in a spin. As he completed his turn, Naruto caught sight of Slug's now frozen from the inside out head and his smirk widened. Nanya business. Naruto finished his earlier statement as he released his board, which flew at the giant's head and shattered it on impact. I'm getting a terrible sense of who it might be. Hera frowned. Ooh, I love it. Aphrodite tittered. She hummed a bubbly tune. He's hot and still cold. The yes to Hera's no tilde. Aphrodite. Hestia scolded the giggling goddess while the king and queen glared daggers at her. Naruto jumped back and caught the board in his hand before he dropped it to his side. He watched the giant dissolve in satisfaction before he stepped back onto his board and resumed his trip down the mountain. Man, ogres just continued to get dumber with each mountain I visit. Naruto thought to himself. He jumped another ledge and again pressed the SX button at the same time that he leaned down to put his hand on the insides of his feet. Naruto brought his legs up and around in AB Boy's flare several times. On the fifth flare, Naruto pushed himself up and slammed his boots back into their slots just as the board touched the mountainside. He wobbled for a second before he continued his trek down the mountain. This is like watching an X Games run. Aw sports. Hermes smiled. Hey, I'm the sport god. Apollo frowned. Yeah, but the gambling on it comes from me. Teamwork. Hermes added with a grin. Sloppy. Naruto frowned as he lost some speed with that move. He'd have to figure a way to keep his momentum. As he descended past his landing point, Naruto turned around and held his left hand up in the direction. A layer of ice later and Naruto grinned. I'll just have to focus on not landing too hard. Naruto crouched down to gain more speed and let his left hand dip into the snow. The result was a hard bank to the left, which put him back on the original track prior to his decision to grind the giant. Naruto leaned right to straighten himself out and considered the approaching cliff. Should I hit a held bar hop or go for the hand in hand? Naruto mused without a care in the world while he raced down. He jumped onto a thick beam placed by the tour and gained a bit more speed with a grind. 4 seconds to make a choice. Bucket. Let's go over the edge hand in hand. It's TRTR tricky. Talia nodded her head to the remixed beat. She'd have to burn a copy from somewhere. The remix in Naruto's ears finished as he went over the edge of the cliff. Naruto leaned left and grabbed the edge of his board with his hand. His other hand activated the SX button in his glove and detached the board from his feet. Naruto jumped off his board so that it would spin in front of him as he turned his body to face the incoming mountainside. Once he was facing the mountain, Naruto's hands shot out and grabbed onto the board while his feet planted themselves on the snow-covered bottom, the boot clips facing the mountain. Naruto kicked his feet up and down and his board spun like a DJ's record. Before he hit the ground, Naruto flipped his board and slipped his feet back into position. Quote ellipsis. What? Hazel asked after the clip played. Why would? I don't understand that sport. Frank patted her shoulder. It's okay, neither do I. Talia scoffed and rolled her eyes. Kids don't understand awesome when it's right in front of you, says the immortal maiden. Annabeth teased. Shut up, Annie. Snow shot up as Naruto landed near flawlessly, as close as anyone could get with physics working against you, and he grinned. That would net him a bronze medal alone in the trick scoring. Now all he had to do was make it down the slope without issue, simple enough. All he had to do was offer one of his old trophies to his mom. Kione. Piper spat out with a scowl. She was tempted to stop now before she had to read any more. The one thing that kept her going was the one sentence that remained. Of course. Hera looked just as displeased as Piper was with this development. He loved being a demigod. That is amazingly short, a shame. Hades said, enjoying the ruffled look Hera had. Piper closed the book and let out a huff through her nose. Her eyes narrowed and flashed through various shades of red. I'm glad it was her simple response to the Lord of the Underworld's comment.